VCY America presents Crosstalk, a nationwide call-in program discussing issues that have an effect on our families, our communities, our churches, our nation, and our world. Crosstalk, an opportunity for you to voice your concerns for biblical principles. And now live by satellite and around the world on the internet at vcyamerica.org. Here is today's Crosstalk.
Well, thank you, Mr. Morris, and good to have you with us on Crosstalk today. And as we look at the world, there have been those who say the world is burning. A Jewish rabbi friend of mine called me from Brooklyn here a few weeks ago. He said, Vic, America is burning because we see the deterioration of understanding of what this country really stands for, what it's built on. And you have people who probably are gifted with a heavy dose of ignorance as far as the Constitution is concerned, another dose of gullibility, which is a creeping disease, meaning that you, whatever goes into your ears, you believe it is fact. And today, it's our privilege to have a good friend of America on with us. He was a former PLO member, and he was part of the Muslim Brotherhood activists. He's the author of books including God's War on Terror and For God or For Tyranny. His name is Walid Shoebat. And Walid, it's a privilege to have you with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Walid, we've chatted numerous times about the issues that face our country and face other countries such as Israel. And, of course, your story coming out of a life of terror and with a whole different worldview, and God got a hold of you, opening His Word, and it redirected your attention to what is true and what is right. But there are things that are happening in the immediate that are very interesting. Now, we've heard a lot of debate on the air even today, talking about what it was that stimulated this big ruckus, the terrorist activities. Nobody wanted to call it terrorism. But we find as Libya was attacked, we lost an ambassador, and the fact that he was not just killed, but he was brutally treated in a disrespectful way. The term that came from some who are very close to the subject said he was sodomized. Now, this kind of treatment against a man who represented our country. But nobody wanted to talk about it being terrorism. Terrorism. Now, there are some people behind this issue. Now, the film, obviously, was something that could be used as a fuse on a bomb. But, Walid, you have some special insight on this. The man behind the terrorist films apparently had some direct ties to terrorism. Tell us his story.
All right, but I must comment about what you said about Libya. It's still not confirmed that Stevens was sodomized.
Okay.
You know, I've seen the video in the Arabic language.
Okay.
And to be frank, they were saying, let's hope he's alive, let's hope he's alive. And then they cried, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. So the Americans understand what Allahu Akbar means, and they related that to these people being terrorists, because these people came after the fact. The terrorists attacked the embassy, took off, and then people came to try to get Stevens out. So still, it doesn't disclude the idea that there was a problem with the sodomizing and the things of that sort. Mm-hmm. But until it all gets sorted out, let us be kind of more careful and more diligent. And, it is possible that that's the truth, but we still don't know for sure.
It stands to be verified.
Yes. Yeah, the story came out from Lebanon, which referred to Agence France, a news agency, but as a source. But going to that source, you never find that story. So, we still have to wait to really see if that story is correct.
Yes.
However, regarding your second question, the issue of Nokoula Basseley Nokoula, or that's what he claims to be. That's what In fact, he fooled the court. I wrote an article saying his name is not Nokoula Basseley Nokoula. Now, yesterday, he was arrested again, and he says his name is Nokoula Basseley Yusuf. So which one is it? So I was correct that this man goes by many names. So when it comes to the film, The Innocence of Muhammad, our government, the media, uses a narrative that is mired with contradictions. It relies on false statements provided by the filmmaker, who himself is an untrustworthy source. So how do we trust what he says? So, if we stick to what can be proven, we might obtain the possibility that terror supporters produced that film. Case in point, Muhammad al-Dura. Muhammad al-Dura, what the Israelis claimed, what the Palestinians claimed was shot by the Israelis, was proven in a French court wasn't true. And they staged it so they can create anger against Israel and the Jewish people. You have the whole Hollywood documentary showing what Palestinians do, what Islamists do, to kind of lie and fool the Western media. So this could be the same case here. So let's examine the facts, instead of the filmmakers' own fiction. Court documents. We have court documents. We have U.S. trustee reports. I have collaboration with the FBI myself. I have dealt with the Canadian Peel Police, which is their intelligence bureau, on the issue of Iyad, who is my cousin, and who or the man who calls himself Nokoula Basseley Nokoula, the producer of the movie, has been dealing with my cousin for a long time. What is the reason for this man to be dealing with a terror supporter like my cousin, a major conduit fraudster who issues passports and is a master artist in changing identifications? In other words, this man was very interested in changing his IDs. He had many shenanigans, which we have the court records, in which he, with my cousin, embezzled $870,000. And he had a methamphetamine business as well. That the bust, the FBI, remember, had a bust regarding a Middle Eastern crime network, in which they were trying to find the methamphetamine business that relates to Hezbollah. Hezbollah is a terrorist organization. And that's how this man, this filmmaker, was arrested as a result of this bust. And he was found guilty. And regardless that it was his third offense, the FBI and the feds, asked from Judge Snyder to give him lots of leniency. So the narrative that circulates the media fails to answer crucial questions behind the mystery of this film. For example, to date, no one has stepped forward or can confirm for certain that whoever holds the identity of this filmmaker, he calls himself Nokoula Basseley Nokoula, is even that man. We don't have evidence. He, after all, he held several IDs, including Muslim names. He went by the name of Ahmad Hamdi, which is a Muslim name. So he could easily have presented himself as a Copt and could possibly still be Muslim. The claim I'm making here is not easily dismissed. If an Egyptian by the name of Nokoula Basseley Nokoula is blamed for angering Mr. Eliason, if somebody angers 1 million Muslims, don't you think it'll be logical, since everyone is known by their clan names in Egypt and in the whole Middle East, that they would be able to produce his brothers, cousins, aunts, siblings, wives, ex-wives, mistresses if he had any, even the pet names? So it doesn't make any sense that somebody sparks these riots in 30 countries, and especially it's sparked in Egypt, and Egypt cannot produce this man. It doesn't seem to make any sense. But I could be wrong. Still, the future is ahead of us. This might be unraveled later on. In the Middle East, you are always known from your clan name, Plus, there is a clan Nokoula in my village, Beit Sahur, which Iyad, my cousin, connects to. In fact, he also carried the last name Tanas. He went by Thomas Tanas. It's in the court document. And when I was dealing with the Canadian intelligence, I have the email. They're asking me regarding my cousin Iyad, not Nokoula, regarding my cousin Iyad having a connect to a man by the last name Tanas. So, there is a mired background regarding this person. He claims to be an activist like me and you. Me and you are activists. We debate the issues of Islam, but we don't debate the issues of Islam by making a film of that sort and then claiming that we were funded by 100 Jews and claiming that we have Israeli passport, that we're Jewish. He claimed to be Jewish with an Israeli passport. Why? Why would someone claim to be Jewish with an Israeli passport and he was funded by a bunch of Jews? And he's a Coptic Christian. It seems to me that he wants the attack to be on those two sets of people who must be his real enemies, not his friends.
Sure.
You see what? Yeah. So it's all mired in still mystery by the government, but we have enough evidence to basically have probable cause to think this could be related to a Bollywood or Muhammad al-Dura. He used A&M trading. You know, my cousin used A&M trading when he was smuggling tobacco to Syria. This man used M&A trading. M&A trading, A&M trading doesn't exist. Okay, they use these fictitious names. Why would he use the similar name to my cousin's? My cousin, who was using that name when he was smuggling tobacco from Costco, $600,000 worth into Syria. And he was doing his methamphetamine business under M&A trading in 2009. You know, so it seems that from 2000 till 2009, that's almost 10 years, you have these two related together. Plus, the filmmaker went by the name of Irwin Salame. Well, Iyad Salame, Irwin Salame, seems to be the same last name. And these, by the way, are from court records and from correspondence with the intelligentsia.
Now, Walid, there are, of course, allegations that are flowing and information back and forth. The question was, this film was made much earlier this summer, and yet all of a sudden this thing explodes at this point in time. Was it a long fuse, or was this explosion, I mean, there have been questions raised that this attack on the embassy, the people came with the kind of weapons that doesn't just happen coming out of your backyard. I mean, they had grenades, they had all kinds of powerful military stuff.
Correct, absolutely. It's a very good point you bring, and here's the issues. We must all agree that the spark of these demonstrations started in Egypt. The domino effect stemmed from Egypt. Egypt caused the domino effect. No one in the West is looking at who started the riots. They're looking at the film as the one that sparked the riots, and that's the big mistake. Who started the riots in Egypt was the Salafist Noor Party, led by Bakkar, who joined Dar al-Hikmah, Mr. Waris in Dar al-Hikmah, who was interested in changing the laws in the West. Since he talked about the failures in the past with the cartoon, Muhammad cartoon, and with other issues in Great Britain, in Germany. In fact, the days after that, in Sudan, who was attacked, the embassy of Germany, the embassy of the United Kingdom, the United States embassy, exactly what the plans were.
The chain reaction, yeah.
Correct. So they said, we failed. The Americans, the West did not change its laws. So we need to do something. And they started it on September the 11th. In fact, the video was there from June or July of this year.
Yeah.
No one cared. Muslims see this all the time, because there's always some sort of American that likes to pick and, make Muhammad a pansy and whatever. This happens every single day. Why this one? Why now? And then the translation was made and introduced right a couple, 3 days before 9/11. Why? Why is all these things happening on 9/11? And why would they demonstrate on 9/11? And in fact, America was attacked again on 9/11. We have two 9/11s now. Let's not forget that. An attack on an embassy is an attack on the United States itself.
Well, as we're talking today with Walid Shoebat, some very close connections here and things to be talking about as we recognize that the war of terror continues. We'll be right back in 60 seconds as Walid joins us for more. And when we come to the halfway point, we'll be opening our phone lines if you'd like to talk with Walid Shoebat. But in the meantime, we'll be right back.
Back to Genesis with Dr. John Morris, scientist with the Institute for Creation Research. Dr. Morris, we know that both birds and reptiles lay eggs. Does this imply that they're related?
Chris, as it turns out, reptile and bird eggs are very different from each other, and dinosaur eggs are different from both. We can draw a couple of conclusions from this, I think. One is that birds did not evolve from dinosaurs. The differences are striking and pervasive. Furthermore, the differences between dinosaur eggs and modern reptile eggs indicates that maybe dinosaurs were a separate category all their own, and not a special kind of reptile as we had previously thought. The point is, God created each basic category of animal separate and distinct from all others. Chris, we don't have all the evidence, but that's how I see it from a back to Genesis perspective.
Thanks, Dr. John. For more on the relevance of creation, call 1-800-7-GENESIS. That's 1-800-7-GENESIS.
And welcome back to Crosstalk, where today it's our privilege to have Walid Shoebat with us, a man who has got his ear very close to the Middle East. He knows what it is all about. He was at one time a terrorist, but he read the Bible and found out which side of the fence he was on, and he chose the right way. But Walid, good to have you with us today. And as we're talking about this interesting thing, your cousin actually having connections to the guy that made this movie. But you had mentioned, I think, you said your cousin at one time had been arrested in Canada?
That is correct. In fact, this is why the liberal media doesn't want to touch this story. Mm-hmm. Because you can link to article I wrote about my cousin in 2008, the same name, as was presented by the media regarding the connect between this filmmaker and Iyad Salameh. That connect by the media was in 2012 on September 16th. My connect is in 2008. That proves that my link to terrorism is ironclad, and that's the issue. And my cousin, he had a passport by the name of Gabriel Ramzi. His name is not Gabriel Ramzi, his name is Iyad Salameh. So he had concocted a legitimate passport from Canada. Okay? In fact, that's how the Canadians caught him. They looked for Gabriel Ramzi and they caught Iyad Salameh, and I have the correspondence to prove all this case. And so, it shows that this man who made the film had different identifications, which were valid IDs, and this is how the court were not able to know his real name. We still, till today, do not know the man's real name. So, and then the American government, and this is the whole mysterious thing, in the court documents when it came to the case of the filmmaker prior to the film, when he was caught in the methamphetamine and embezzlement issues, it was his third offense. Who came to the rescue? The feds. It's in the court document. The feds asked for leniency from Judge Snyder regarding this man who calls himself Nokoula Basseley Nokoula. And the reason they asked for that leniency was that because Nokoula became an informant and he's going to help them catch Iyad Salameh. Well, excuse me. I've been dealing with the FBI for 15 years over Iyad Salameh and the NCIC and all these people. And in fact, I was dealing with the Los Angeles police. Now, the Los Angeles police were about to arrest Iyad Salameh, who's been doing his shenanigans for 20 years in the United States of America, finally called me and said, the feds called them up and told them to step down. Don't touch Iyad Salameh, even though he's got warrants for his arrest. When he was caught in Canada, guess what happened? The Canadians told me that if the American administration doesn't take Iyad Salameh, we're going to have to ship him back to Palestine. And guess what they chose? Send him to Palestine. In other words, they let him go.
Well, even going back to the terrorist thing that happened over Lockerbie, when the big plane was shot down, the man was in prison. He should have stayed there the rest of his life. Then he comes.
Megrahi is a great case in point.
And then he comes down with alleged cancer or something, and so humanitarian reasons he's going to die in a few months, so they're going to send him back. He goes back with a hero's welcome.
Absolutely. So you're adding another case in point. We have several case in point in which Western governments begin to collaborate with the terrorism business and let them go. So because they think in their mind, if you let these terrorists go, that they will have leniency on us, have leniency on the terrorists, and maybe they will thwart terrorism, and maybe they will stop terrorism. So the terrorists knows very well. We just become collaborators, and they give them some lie, some false information. Another case in point, Hammam Abu Khalil al-Balawi. Hammam Abu Khalil al-Balawi decided to become one of those informants. He wanted to supposedly tip the CIA on the whereabouts of Ayman Zawahiri, the second man in command in Al-Qaeda. What happened in that fiasco? The CIA agents died because Hammam Abu Khalil al-Balawi decided to detonate himself and kill CIA agents. That's the kind of thing the government is doing. That is really terrible decision, thinking that these people can easily be reformed. Because in my view, the only way for a terrorist to be reformed is to convert to Christianity, because that's when you realize you do not have to kill yourself like Hammam Abu Khalil al-Balawi to go to heaven, but that God has provided his son, shed his blood on that cross. And by that, I am redeemed.
Praise
That's
God.
the message that the terrorists need. Yet that is not supposed to be given to the terrorists because it offends their religion.
You know, as we're talking, I was thinking about so many of these cases where government pullback has occurred. And while you were talking, my mind went on, look what's happening on the Mexican border, Arizona. And the border guards are ready to give their life, if need be, to protect the border. And the federals say, or call them federales or whatever, they tell them, no, back off, don't do this. Anything that is of a major issue that needs to be dealt with, we're finding back away from it. Folks,
Right.
this is something that we're seeing where people who are supposed to be discerning have a rough time discerning between good and evil. And
Right.
the problem is, and when I see that happening, Walid, I have big questions as to, is this a special organized plot among all of these people connected, or is this just the way the liberals think?
It's a very good question. You know, to make the statement it's a plot, we have to have evidence. We still don't have all the evidence or the pieces of the puzzle, but we have probable cause to think. When Eric Holder, okays the shipment of weapons to drug cartel, what was that all about? And why is the government not opening the books on that issue? There is truth to that story. One American agent was killed as a result. And now we want to know, as an American people, what happened. Why would we be shipping weapons to the enemy? This, in essence, there is a lot of suspicion to say this is probably an intent to attack the Second Amendment, the right to bear arms. Guns are the problem.
Oh, already in this, all during this time, Walid, just while this big to-do over the ambassador, I understand that Hillary Clinton signed some deal that is literally possibly going to impact the Second Amendment.
That's correct. It's exactly the case. Now we come to the story of the film.
Yeah.
The film is going to do what? Is going to chisel away on our First Amendment. You better not criticize the Prophet. You better not criticize Islam. Oh, Keith Eliason, you better stop your show because that offends millions of Muslims.
Yeah.
See, there you have it. So you have a two-pronged, the Second Amendment, the First Amendment, and that's what's at stake here. Because no one is asking who sparked the violence. They're asking who sparked the film.
Yeah. And the identification of the entire motive was verbalized not too many hours ago at the United Nations when Ahmadinejad made his statement, again, claiming that Israel should be wiped off the map and that the United States was evil, that we should be punished. I forget all of the things that he accused the United States of. But here we have people sitting there. The interesting thing is, usually when he got up to speak, the Jewish delegation and the USA delegation would get up and walk out. But interesting, this time, the Jewish delegation got up and walked out, and guess who stayed?
The Americans.
Yep.
There you have it. So, what I've said in your show in the past, that Iran is going to get away with the nuke, seems to go against all the grain of these predictors to say that Israel is going to attack Iran. So far, I am correct that Iran will get away with a nuke. And how did I know that? It's because I studied my Bible. In the Bible, in Isaiah 21, it's very clear that arise, O Elam. Elam is Persia, Iran. And they will basically destroy Saudi Arabia. In other words, while the enemies will plot against Israel, we should always remember the most important thing in the Bible: God is in control.
Amen. Well, folks, we need to pray for our country, pray for the peace of Israel, and pray as we face some of the most important decisions coming up. Just, is it 40 days to the election when we've got to make decisions? Every day we mark it down another day closer, and we need to approach this with great prayer and seek God for wisdom. The Bible says, if any man lack wisdom, let him ask of God, who will give liberally. He'll give us wisdom and understanding. But as we see the dare we call it the plot thickens?
Yes, you can say it's a plot because it seems that there is ample probable cause that there is a call. The liberals have always called us to disarm. It's not a secret. So that's the idea, to begin to attack each one of those points, First Amendment, Second Amendment, and all these things, in attempt to basically allow Sharia to take a reign globally. Why would we be supporting Sharia law? Why are we stopping our courts from making Sharia illegal in America? Why this whole push on allowing Islamists to come like Trojan horses in our country, in our government, in which you have one politician speak out and say, wait a minute, we have a Trojan horse. We have the case of Huma Abedin, and how many of the Congress stood with her? Less than 1%. So you could say that 99% of the Congress are cowards.
And the issue that she is right there with one hand in the hand of the Islamic Brotherhood, and the other hand in the hand of the Secretary of State.
That is correct. We always have to think the story of David and Goliath. When it comes to evil, only one or two or three or a handful will stand against Goliath. In that case, it was only one, King David.
Yes.
And King David made all the difference. Just like I always say, Brother Eliason, your show, what you do, that's the narrow gate that will eventually make that difference.
As we're standing, and little David said, I don't come with my sling and whatever, but in the power of the Lord. And folks,
Amen.
That is all the hope that we have is in Christ. We're going to open our phone lines right now if you'd like to join us with Walid Shoebat. In the meantime, we've got about a minute before the break. Walid, tell us how people can get your books.
It's very easy. As you spell the word shoe, as I always say, I will not be insulted. SHOE and bat, B-A-T, like a baseball bat. SHOEBAT.com.
And the book titles and...
yes, yeah. For God or for Tyranny. I'm a very bad salesman, you can tell. For God or for Tyranny when nations abandon the laws of God.
Well, folks, you need to be informed. You need to be on top of this and seek God's wisdom. And as we have our young people growing up in this environment, if there's ever a time they need the assurance that God is in control, and as they face the evil, and as they see, you see, it was interesting, not too long ago, we had almost 1,000 people, purportedly, young people, to meet here in the south side of Milwaukee. These were Islamic children to come together to learn how to be leaders. How important it is. Meanwhile, at another Christian group that was planning to have leadership camp, only 5 kids signed up. You see, how do you know that? Because it was our leadership camp. And the question, if we have near 1,000 kids registered to show up to learn how to be leaders in the Islamic faith, where is the mind and the heart of our young people today? That's why I say it's so important, folks, to dedicate our efforts to preparing our young people as we face the crisis that's not too far away. We will be right back after this.
It only takes a quick look around to see that the world is a mess. There is something very sinister happening behind the scenes in the areas of money, politics, and religion in our country today. What's worse, we are not being fully informed by Wall Street or government officials, and most of the media is only repeating what the politicians and bankers tell them. In the book, A Nation in Crisis, authors Larry Bates and Chuck Bates, news executives with IRN USA News, unravel the confusion and unmask the mystery surrounding the institutions controlling our money, our government, and our religions. They also give their thoughts on how one should respond to the demise of the U.S. dollar, declining morality, the muzzling of faith, and the chaos of the culture. The hardcovered book, A Nation in Crisis, is available for a donation of $20 to VCY America, which can be made by calling 1-800-729-9829. Ask for the book, A Nation in Crisis. Again, the number toll-free, 1-800-729-9829.
And welcome back to Crosstalk, where the lines at this moment are jammed. And we've got calls coming in from all over the place. And you'd like to talk with Walid Shoebat, our guest, and some of you may have just tuned in. Walid, at one time, was a terrorist, Islamic. And the challenge, of course, his wife was not Islamic. And he wanted to challenge her regarding the use of the Bible and what the Bible said. And so he had to read it to find out. And God somehow spoke to his heart, and he realized that he was on the wrong team. Right now, let's go to Mobile, Alabama, and talk with Earl. And Earl, you're on with Walid Shoebat. Hello, Earl.
Yeah.
You're on the air.
I wanted to ask you a question. Israel usually don't make promises unless they carry through to it. Do you really believe that Israel is going to attack Iran?
At this point, I don't believe Israel is going to attack Iran because the current administration does not support Israel in attacking Iran. Number two, the logistics issue, I'm not a military expert, but the logistics issue is much more tougher than the case of the Usayrat in Iraq. If you recall, many Americans said there was no weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, but they forgot that Israel destroyed the Usayrat, which was a nuclear reactor. And that was a very tough mission. This mission will be much tougher, compounded 100 times more, because many of these centrifuge is under the ground, way deep under the ground, and it takes some special military apparatus from the U.S. to help and aid Israel. Israel is left with only one option if they're going to attack Iran. That's with a nuclear. That's not going to happen, because if that happens, the whole world will be a chaos in this case, and Israel does not want to take that position, that kind of responsibility. And this is why Netanyahu is pleading with the U.S. to give the green light and to basically aid Israel into that attack. But that's not going to happen anytime soon. So I've been correct all along for all these years about this whole scenario.
But one of the things, too, Walid, when you see how the president has treated Netanyahu, I mean, rude, snubbing him, along with other international leaders. He'd rather go on David Letterman's show than to meet with the Prime Minister of Israel.
That is absolutely correct. It's another case in point. Netanyahu is being snubbed by the United States, is being given the cold shoulder by the United States, even though Israel has been our number one ally in the region. It holds the region at bay when it comes to terrorism and all sorts of things, intelligence exchanges and everything. So the treatment of Netanyahu is telling us that we need to start questioning the ethics of Obama himself. President Obama seems to be more ethical towards advancing the cause of the Islamist than he is the cause of America shining to the world as a beacon of strength and a beacon of justice and liberty. That he went to Egypt and he basically gave the green light for the Muslim Brotherhood. He insisted. When Hosni Mubarak says, this is a terrorist organization, Obama insisted that the Muslim Brotherhood be present. Obama had a Muslim by the name of Rashad Hussein write his speech. Obama had interviewed in which he said himself, the greatest sound I heard was the call to the prayer, which is Allah, Allah is great, which is the same call terrorists do. So, it's questionable to me that Obama is a Christian. I have my doubts. I have reason to doubt because no one in the world has produced that Christian testimony. Brother Eliason, have you heard Obama's Christian testimony yet?
No, I haven't. I have not. I've heard allegations that he has connections to Christianity, but again, as Christians, we look for the witness.
Right, so I rest my case.
Mauston, Wisconsin, you're on the air with Walid Shoebat. Go ahead. Mason, you're on the air.
Yes, my question is this government push to get rid of ammunition and guns, is it because I have this feeling that the federal government is going to push against the Americans so hard that we're going to take our constitutional rights and push back, and the Constitution says when the government no longer meets the needs of the people, we have a right to dissolve that government, and up to and including force. Do you think that's possible? And do you think the military, most of the military, would go with the government or with the people? And I'll hang up and hear your answer.
Thank you, sir.
Well, I think his question is whether we can do something if the government tries to take our guns. Now, I'm not sure how to answer that question. I'm not an expert on the Constitution. You probably can answer that better than me. But as far as taking away our guns, it's the same way of taking away it's also similar to what you see when the government wants to control how our children drink soda pop, how we smoke cigarettes or not. All these things are about control. If we don't have guns, then it can easily control people, because people feel very secure when they're armed. I feel secure in my home because I'm armed in my home, and dare anybody come in, I'm going to shoot them. So when you have no arms, it increases crime. When crime increases, you need more government. So the dependency on the government is what the goal of the liberal revolutionary government that we are under. It's a very revolutionary system. Of course, Obama, his master was, what's his name? He was a communist. I forgot his name.
Reverend Wright? Jeremiah Wright?
Reverend Wright.
Oh,
he wrote...
Bill Ayers? Bill Ayers?
No, even before Bill Ayers. I forgot his name. But, who took his hat off and he says, I take my hat for Lucifer because he was the first revolutionary. You remember that story. So even Jeremiah Wright even says, he doubts Obama's conversion to Christianity. So we have an attempt here to basically take these freedoms. First Amendment, Second Amendment are the crucial points that we as Americans need to stand behind.
Well, Daniel in Rice Lake, Wisconsin. Go ahead, Daniel.
Hello. Was the reaction by Islam to the film denigrating Muhammad religious in nature, or was it a reaction based on the hatred of America caused by our wars in Iraq and Afghanistan?
Good question.
That's a very good question. If we say that America is guilty about Iraq and Afghanistan, and that's what causes terrorism, we have to ask ourselves a question, very crucial question here. Why is, the majority of suicide bombing exist in countries that have no occupation whatsoever? So it's an excuse. Secondly, what we need to understand from the terrorism business and from the Islamist business, they're not interested in simply bombing us, killing us, and all these things. They are interested in the implementation of their constitution, that is Sharia law. Mm-hmm. So the demonstrations, they look for these demonstrations in order to begin to enforce Sharia globally. And if people think that the enforcement of Sharia is not in America, think again. You have meatpacking companies that have bidets for Muslims in Greeley, Colorado. That is implementation of Sharia, because a Muslim has to use a bidet before he does his 5 prayers. And so you have basketball courts in which the Muslim girls say, we can't play basketball in front of boys, we have to have a private basketball. That's part of Sharia law. When a taxi cab Muslim driver says, I cannot help this poor blind man, he has a dog is considered unclean. That's part of Sharia law. In fact, Brother Keith, the Friday after 9/11, there was a major demonstration in Egypt. In Egypt, the title of the demonstration wasn't about the film at all. It was called Beard Day. Yes, you heard me right. Beard Day. What was that all about? They wanted to enforce the Sharia because in Sharia, Muslim males have a right to extend their beards. The military and the police in Egypt is not allowed to have beards because that's a throwback to the previous government, which was mostly westernized kind of a system. So in order to insist to change Sharia, they didn't use the film. They used the beard.
Okay, let's go right now to Bayview, Wisconsin, and talk with Mike. Mike, you're on the air.
Yeah, that's right. And, all of this demonstrating and everything, I believe it's to knock out the First Amendment. And once they chisel away with that, Second Amendment will follow it. I don't know. I just love to hear you guys talk, and I especially like listening to Walid also. So, if we don't wake up and our children don't get off the computers and the Xboxes and everything else they have, I don't know what's going to happen. It doesn't look good, does it?
Right, and I mean, you're in danger of becoming a responsible American, my friend. And this is the problem, really. I watched an old clip from the 50s or 60s, and it was a guy who taught American how to become an American citizen, and he showed that there is a responsibility in the citizenship, that every American has to be involved in the government, in the politics, in decision-making, and all these things. And it's a crucial responsibility that every American must take when they take that citizenship. The problem is people are becoming citizens, and they give oath and allegiance when they're lying, too, coming from the Middle East, like my cousin Iyad Salameh. He became citizen because he claimed he's a Mexican farm worker. So in other words, we are allowing people by the droves to come into this country and gain citizenship without responsibility. It should be a responsibility when you vote that you be involved in everything. If you're not involved, and if you just simply want to collect welfare and simply want the government to give you a handout, then you're not keeping up with that oath you took, and you're a liar, and you're a cheat. That we should visit that area of citizenship and say, no, people need to be responsible about that citizenship.
Let's go to Emory, South Dakota, and talk with Samuel. Samuel, you're on the air.
Yes, I was just going to comment on something that your guest said about King David, who stood alone against Goliath, and then something that you said, Vic, about only 5 young people signing up for leadership. I believe the answer is to that. I heard on Worldview Weekend a few weeks ago when somebody said either Brendan Howes or one of his guests is in the area of compromise. The compromise is the language of Satan, and a child of God cannot speak it. And I believe our young generation, our young people are growing up in that atmosphere of compromise, and they don't know where to stand anymore. And then they don't know which direction they should take, because it's all so cloudy.
Thank you so much, Samuel, from Emory, South Dakota, right on target. And what frightens me, folks, is that many young people who are growing up allegedly in Christian families have learned academic Christianity, but it's about 18 inches too high, and it hasn't gotten to the heart yet. Let's go to Telford, Pennsylvania, and talk to Chris. Chris, you're on the air.
Yes, thanks for taking my call. I'm a strong supporter of VCY and Walid Shoebat. I've seen you in Philadelphia, Walid, many years ago. Thanks for taking my call. My question is this. Looking at the big picture, when you pull back and look at this Marxist, socialist, secular agenda of Obama, Hillary Clinton, the Bilderbergs, the big picture of that, and the marriage that they have with the radical Islamic world, and, going back to even the Grand Mufti in Jerusalem and Hitler, what do you see in the future of this marriage kind of a religious-driven evil and a secular Marxist-driven evil? And these two collisions, are they good bed partners, and do you see a successful plan that they're trying to create here by, I don't know, I'm just trying to get your perspective, I guess, Walid, on the big picture of this kind of marriage?
That is a very good question. There is a marriage between the two apparatuses.
Walid, we're going to pause just for 60 seconds. We're up against a hard break, but we'll be right back with that answer, folks. And Chris, thanks for calling from Telford, Pennsylvania. And we shall return with that answer. Stay with us. This is Crosstalk.
For the Worldview Weekend Minute, I'm Brandon House. Our website's worldviewweekend.com. In our last commentary, we began talking about 2 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 21. He made him who knew no sin to be sin for us, that we might become the righteousness of God in him. As we said, some teach that this means that Jesus Christ was a sinner, but he was not made a sinner. In fact, John MacArthur writes so clearly, he says, it is crucial, therefore, to understand that the only sense in which Jesus was made sin was by imputation. He was personally pure, yet officially culpable, personally holy, yet forensically guilty. But in dying on the cross, Christ did not become evil like we are, nor do redeemed sinners become inherently as holy as he is. God credits believers' sin to Christ's account and his righteousness to theirs, end quote. Jesus Christ did not become a sinner on the cross.
And we're back with you in our last segment here on Crosstalk. Our guest today, Walid Shoebat, who's not a stranger to this program, and we greatly appreciate his ministry and his challenge that goes out across the country. And Walid, that was a good question from Telford, Pennsylvania, about a marriage. Explain.
Yes, I mean, if you look at the documentation that was seized in the Holy Land Fund Foundation in the trial, they discovered the records from the Muslim Brotherhood in which they said they're going to use the elements that sympathizes with the Islamist cause. Basically, the liberals, in this case, the socialists. And so that marriage, they used it. In fact, we see somebody like Al Gore. He talks about environmentalism. Did you know that every statement Al Gore uses when it comes to environmentalism and Islam, he got those quotes from Abdullah Omar Nassif, who was the boss of Huma Abedin, sitting with Hillary Clinton at the State Department. So we can see the collaboration between the two, and but that collaboration will not work. Reason, because we've had communist Russia deal with the CIS, the Commonwealth of Independent States that came later on to be called that, which is the Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, Kyrgyzstan, which predominantly was Muslim. And the communists began to persecute the Muslim. So the Muslim wanted to separate from these and eventually created his own states. So in other words, the Islamist will never allow the communist or the anarchist or the socialist to have their agenda if and when they seize power of these kind of rulings, these countries. We always have to look at Daniel chapter 2, in the iron leg, that is. It's iron with clay. So it's some strong, some weak. But in other words, also, they don't mingle. There are entities connected together that will not mingle in the end and will basically cause it to shatter. We also have the Shia-Sunni divide, which will cause Islam to shatter. In other words, evil never succeeds in the long run. And that kind of evil that's been conspired by the Islamist and the liberal socialist agenda is not going to succeed in the end and will be the reason for the cause of its fall, because it's divided from within too.
Debbie in Louisiana, you're on the air. Go right ahead. Debbie, are you there?
Oh, hi.
Yes,
sorry. Yeah, I didn't catch my name there for a minute.
Sure.
Yes. Speaking of Islam, one thing that I think really needs done among Christians, that it needs to be presented in the churches for people to understand it more. My reasoning for saying that is that I currently work as a pre-K teacher at a Methodist school. Well, it's a church, and the school is there, and I noticed that with their Wednesday night service, the pastor of that church was presenting Islam versus Christianity, and I thought, finally, somebody in DeRidder. This is a very small area down here in DeRidder, and I thought, well, maybe somebody's finally opening the door to this to explain what Islam is all about, because a lot of people just don't hear anything about it, and they don't understand it. And I wanted to, first question I asked him, because I was curious, I asked the pastor right away, I said, do you believe that Christians and Muslims worship the same God? And he looked at me and said, yes, I do. And that completely put me by shock. I guess I didn't expect that answer from him, but he completely believes that in everything we all basically agree on pretty much the same thing. And so this is what he's teaching in his church. This is what he's teaching his congregation. And concerning my own church, my church is going purpose-driven. And so I feel like I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. And it's people are not listening down here. I mean, what would you suggest? Is there anything I could do?
Rejoice. That's the first thing you should do. Rejoice and look up for your redemption draweth nigh. Because what you just stated regarding the pastor and regarding the purpose-driven life and all this falling away, Islam, is really fulfilling the Bible. The Bible is correct. The Bible warned you of that day. The falling away must come first. Then the man of sin is revealed. So if the falling away must come first, and you witness so much falling away, you need to rejoice. This is not your doing that the pastor decides to go to bed with wolves or be a wolf in sheep's clothing. That is his choice. But you must make your voice stand out and speak out, because the Bible also says many will do great endeavors. So the question is that we as believers who believe that the two collide between Christianity and Islam, and we stand with the Trinity, we stand with the truth of the Bible, we believe that we don't worship the same God, it is that apparatus that is not raising its voice loud and clear. And that's been the problem. So in other words, we need to do our share. Why do we react to what we see happening in Church A when Church B here is doing nothing about it?
Thank you so much, Debbie. Appreciate that from Louisiana. And we're coming down the home stretch. Walid, we have exactly 2 minutes, and I'm going to give that to you to kind of wrap things up.
Okay. For me?
Yep, that's all yours. You got 2 minutes to go.
All right. We must understand that the Middle East currently has been fueling for a long time and looking for the excuse to spark a revolution. We had an Islamist revolution in 30 different countries, and we should be seeing this as clear as a whistle, that the Islamic revolution is on its way, as we have stated on Brother Keith Eliason's show several times over. We were attacked for a second time. An attack on American embassies is an attack on the United States itself. And they were attacked again without even giving the protection that is necessary for our embassy in Libya. Knowing that it was 9/11 is no excuse. And our government keeps saying it was the film and did not even put one and one together, that we were having a terrorist attack in Libya. Should be an alarming reason why, as Americans, we must really be exercising our rights to vote and to vote this current regime out of the system very soon in the next election. So, yes, I could hear somebody say, well, we're electing a Mormon, we're electing, between a Mormon and a Muslim. Yes, I agree that Mormonism is not Christianity. We're not electing Mormonism. We're electing somebody who could, the least of the two. When it comes to Republican Democrat, usually we elect the least of the least worthy of the least worse of the two. In this case, I am not really saying that we should just not vote. We should vote for the person that we think is going to carry out the Constitution.
Walid,
that's what we need to be careful about.
Walid, thank you so much. Always appreciate having you on, and we pray you'll have a great day. Thanks for joining us. And thanks for joining us, ladies and gentlemen, on Crosstalk. And it'll be on the VCY Network tonight at 8 p.m. Central Time. Pick it up there and join us. Tell a friend to listen.
You've been listening to Crosstalk via satellite and the Internet from VCY America. Views expressed may or may not be those of this station. For a CD of today's program, send a donation of $6 or more to VCY Tape Ministry, 3434 West Kilbourne Avenue, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, 53208. Or download by RSS or podcast from crosstalkamerica.com. And join us again for Crosstalk.